Welcome to episode 177, originally published on the 16th of November 2025. Over recent years I've read and written about every novel in Ursula K. Le Guin's Hainish setting. These are landmarks of 20th century science fiction and have prompted a huge body of analysis and scholarship that can make them seem intimidating. This episode is a brief personal overview of the series, a beginner's guide to help newcomers to Le Guin get started. If you have questions or suggestions of your own, I'd love to hear from you. Please feel free to comment on the text version of this piece at andyjohnson.xyz. Ursula K. Le Guin, who lived from 1929 to 2018, imagined that humans did not evolve on Earth, but rather on a world of her creation, Hain. The people of this distant planet achieved starflight and reached numerous other habitable worlds. The colonists they left behind on these planets developed distinct cultures of their own and evolved separately. In time, they were drawn back together, first in the League of Worlds and later in the Ecumen, an interstellar affiliation centered on Hain itself. Between 1966 and 2000, Le Guin published 7 novels and 17 stories in the Hainish setting, which together comprise a large proportion of her science fiction. Collectively, they've won numerous major awards and sparked a large and growing body of scholarship. Le Guin's work is frequently involved in discussions of feminism, anthropology, sociology, and gender in science fiction. She was and remains a major figure in so-called soft SF, and the Hainish stories have a strong anthropological bent. The Hainish stories resist easy organisation into a rigid series. Le Guin said of them that, quote, "they aren't a cycle or a saga, they do not form a coherent history." What they do share is a setting, certain peoples and technologies, and a particular feel. Very often these novels and stories are about the interaction of different cultures and the challenges this contact can produce. This is serious-minded SF, a conscious departure from pulp formats and sureties that had long prevailed in the genre. Le Guin's hostility to violence, openness to change, and call for understanding are everywhere in these pages. The Hainish stories have little in the way of physical action, but are rich with ideas. At their frequent best, they're thought-provoking and even moving. What follows is a beginner's guide to the Hainish stories. Early life, early novels, 1961 to 1967. Ursula K. Le Guin was born in California and attended the same school as Philip K. Dick, although they did not know each other. Both of her parents were anthropologists, so she was steeped in the studies of peoples and their cultures from an early age. Le Guin read books and genre magazines like Thrilling Wonder Stories and Astounding, while visitors to the family home included Robert Oppenheimer. Following childhood experiments, she began writing in earnest in the 1950s and published her first story in 1961. Her first genre story, April in Paris, followed in 1962. Sally Goldsmith, whom Le Guin described as, quote, as enterprising and perceptive an editor as the science fiction magazines ever had, was a key early supporter as editor of Amazing Stories and Fantastic. Crucially, Goldsmith bought The Dowry of Anyar, the first Hainish story, which was published in Amazing in September 1964. Later, Le Guin connected with Donald A. Wollheim, whom she called, quote, the tough, reliable editor of Ace Books. In this capacity, he published her first novel, Rocannon's World, published in 1966, plus 2 further Hainish novels, Planet of Exile, also 1966, and City of Illusions, published in 1967. The Dowry of Anyar was incorporated as the opening for Rocannon's World, renamed to Semli's Necklace. These 3 first novels are most commonly found in the omnibus Worlds of Exile and Illusion. Le Guin the writer was not fully formed at the time these novels were written. They contain some limited concessions towards the pulp concerns and formats that Le Guin grew up with. Rocannon's World in particular is a relatively straightforward SF adventure. While it reads superficially like fantasy, complete with alien races which resemble elves and dwarves, its heroic protagonist is an agent of a sophisticated, high-tech interstellar culture. There's more coverage of those three novels in episode 19. Maturing alongside the New Wave, 1969 to 1975. The Left Hand of Darkness, published in 1969, is one of Le Guin's best-known novels and a turning point within her Hainish writings. By this time, Le Guin was emerging as a key figure in science fiction's new wave. With its strong emphasis on gender roles, religion and politics, the fourth Hainish novel aligns strongly with the shifts of this new movement. The novel focuses on Genli I, a human who, like Rekanan before him, is a representative of the Ecumen and a kind of hybrid anthropologist and diplomat. He's dispatched to the planet Gethen, also known as Winter, on a mission to induct it into the Ecumen. I's mission is complicated both by the political conflict on Gethen and by the unique physiology of its people. Gethenians are androgynes, but enter a phase called Kema, in which they can temporarily acquire male or female characteristics. While the gender theme tends to dominate many discussions of Left Hand, the novel is just as much about cultural exchange, love, war, and peace. While it may be going too far to say that its reputation is outsized, the novel is arguably even more interesting in the wider context of the Hainish stories rather than in isolation. The Left Hand of Darkness was covered in episode 23. In Harlan Ellison's anthology Again Dangerous Visions, published in 1972, Le Guin published The Word for World is Forest. Eventually published as a freestanding book in 1976, this is variously referred to as a novel or a novella, and won the Hugo Award for the latter category. The book is a visceral howl of anger, Le Guin's anguished response to the horrors of the Vietnam War and to ecological destruction. The novel is set on Athshay, a densely forested planet which is a clear analogue for Vietnam. A brutal Terran occupation is violently suppressing the local, peaceful, matriarchal tribespeople. Brief and extremely powerful, The Word for World is Forest is unlike Le Guin's other work. While her antipathy to violence is evident throughout her books, this novel is a vivid depiction of its horrors. Crucially, violence is depicted as a kind of contamination, one that infects the Athshayans who learn it from humans and turn it back against them. Le Guin does not celebrate this supposed victory, but rather mourns the loss of a peaceful way of life that may never be regained. An intense condemnation of colonialism, this novel is arguably underrated, too often written off as mere polemic. It was covered in detail in episode 25. The Dispossessed from 1974 is another of Le Guin's best known and most discussed works, inside or outside of the Hainish series. While something so banal as continuity has little role in Le Guin's work, this novel is in part something of a prequel. A minor plot element concerns the theoretical underpinnings of the Ansible, an interstellar communications device featured in many other Hainish novels and stories. The principal architect of the Ansible is Shevek, a brilliant but troubled physicist living on the hardscrabble anarchist moon of Anaris. The novel's unusual structure follows Shevek's life both on the moon and on Uras, a world which is more technologically advanced but driven by capitalist exploitation. In this way, The Dispossessed is a complex exploration of two distinct societies, two diverse ideologies. While at times it can be rather dry, even didactic, this is not a good starting point, but a humane and thought-provoking novel which is rich in ideas. And it was covered in episode 34. Refocusing on short stories, 1990 to 2000. After 1974, Le Guin published no new fiction in the Hainish setting for over 15 years. Her novels in this period were unrelated singletons: The Eye of the Heron from 1978, The Beginning Place from 1980, and Always Coming Home from 1985. The hiatus came to an end in 1990 with the novelette The Showbiz Story, published in the anthology Universe 1. Previously, Le Guin had published only 4 Hainish short stories, all collected in the Wind's 12 Quarters in 1975. During the 90s, she published 13 stories, and over half of all Hainish short fiction was published in the years 1994 and 95. All of the short fiction is contained within 4 readily available collections. The Wind's 12 Quarters contains The Dowry of Anyar, Winter's King, Vaster Than Empires and More Slow, and The Day Before the Revolution. The 1994 collection A Fisherman of the Inland Sea contains The Shobi Story, Dancing to Ganam, and Another Story or A Fisherman of the Inland Sea. The 1995 collection 4 Ways to Forgiveness contains Betrayals, Forgiveness Day, A Man of the People, and A Woman's Liberation. And finally, the 2002 collection The Birthday of the World contains The Matter of Segri, Unchosen Love, Solitude, Coming of Age in Carhide, Mountain Ways, and Old Music and the Slave Women. In general, the short stories can be thought of as more peripheral than central, more complementary than truly essential. Some of the 1990s stories have a cumulative kind of feeling, as if Le Guin was consciously tying together previously established settings and concepts. The 3 Hainish stories in A Fisherman of the Inland Sea, for example, form a loose trilogy focusing on interstellar teleportation. These stories not only mention various previously explored planets like Gethen, Hain, O, and Terra, but also their discussion of Churton theory mirrors the development of the Ansible in The Dispossessed. 4 Ways to Forgiveness is particularly interesting in that it's Le Guin's only short fiction collection to focus entirely on Hainish stories. All published in that 1994 to 1995 period, they're all set on the worlds of Werel and Yeoway and explore the themes of freedom, slavery, trauma, and revolution. Those stories are explored in detail in episode 40. Le Guin returned to the Hainish setting one final time with the novel The Telling, published in 2000. The first long-form entry for over 25 years, which was covered in episode 58. Like some of the late short stories, this relatively slight novel revisits some themes and concepts which Le Guin had explored in earlier Hainish works. For example, its main character Sutty is a representative of the Ecumen, just like Rhiannon from Rhiannon's World, Genly I from The Left Hand of Darkness, and Solly from 4 Ways to Forgiveness. Similarly, the planet Akka, to which Sutty is sent, resembles in some ways the repressive capitalism of Uras in The Dispossessed. What about the reading order? Le Guin shared her own view on reading order. Quote, Rhiannon's World, Planet of Exile, City of Illusions. Where they fit in the Hainish cycle is anybody's guess, but I read them first because they were written first. Then you could read The Word for World is Forest, The Left Hand of Darkness, and The Dispossessed in any order. From there, it seems logical to dip into the short stories and then to read The Telling, which, while certainly not a conclusion to the Hainish stories, could be said to amount to a summation of them. What can be argued strongly is that as powerful as The Left Hand of Darkness and The Dispossessed are, newcomers to Le Guin's work have a lot to gain from reading more widely around them. Further reading. Le Guin's fascinating book of essays, The Language of the Night, from 1979, has recently been returned to print, and collects numerous pieces of non-fiction about SF and fantasy. Some of these are quite well known, including From Elfland to Poughkeepsie and American SF and the Other. Le Guin said of her novel The Eye of the Heron from 1978 that it, quote, may or may not be in the Hainish setting. It's almost never included. The Lathe of Heaven from 1971 is her excellent singleton SF novel, which explores the power of dreaming, the dangerous desire to improve the world, and is strongly influenced by Le Guin's interest in Taoism. Ursula K. Le Guin's towering reputation has only grown since she passed away in 2018. Her work is often considered essential or vitally important, and these kinds of framings can make the book seem intimidating or unapproachable. The sheer moral seriousness and ideological complexity of the Hainish stories can compound this effect. With that being said, Le Guin's work is very readable, perhaps particularly if these books and stories are read in the order that they were written. The Hainish stories offer no high adventure, no easy answers, no straightforward confirmations of already held ideas. These are challenging and complex books, but always at their centre there are people, as inspiring, frail, frustrating and comprehensible as people can be. The essential humanism at the core of Le Guin's work is its animating spark. It flickers fitfully in the early novels, but develops and burns brightly from Le Guin's middle period. For all their alien locales and strange cultures, the Hainish stories are about us, and no less so for the passage of time. Thanks for listening. For more classic science fiction reviews, visit andyjohnson.xyz. You can also find the show on YouTube and follow updates on Blue Sky. In both cases, just search Classic SF with Andy Johnson. Finally, to get in touch, use the contact form on my site or hit the link in the episode description to send a text message.